Sorry to interrupt your regular programming, but we do have a tornado warning that's in effect for a majority of Jefferson County, including their majority of Hancock as well as Brooke County. Radar indicating some rotation within this line of severe thunderstorms that progressing east across the area. And this is moving quickly, even around about 50 miles per hour as it pushes towards the east. And not only dealing with the potential there for a quick spin up of a tornado, but in general dealing with some very high winds within the segment of this line. That the wind speeds themselves can be upwards of even 80 miles per hour. So even outside of any potential for a tornado, just dealing with the potential for some destructive high winds, which if you're wondering why your phone was going off, that's why. The potential is there for wind gusts. Typically with a severe thunderstorm warning, it's up to 60. The potential is there for wind gusts up to 80 miles per hour. So we could see some destructive winds. We've already seen this across portions of Coshocton, Tuscarawas, now moving through Harrison and into Jefferson County. Again, in general, this is a storm that you want to be seeking shelter from. And where we're dealing with wind speeds right now, radar indicating where you're seeing that darker blue, where radar is still indicating there, getting closer towards the Wintersville-Steubenville location. This is just close to, especially just south of Route 22. That darker blue indicating that potential for these wind gusts to reach closer to 80 miles per hour, where radar's estimated. And there is possibility, you can see with the radar feature here, that we could deal with a little rotation within this. So a tornado is possible as well, which is why you've seen that tornado warning issued, which again encompasses most of Jefferson County as well there as portions of Brooke and Hancock counties. If you're in this tornado warning, again, even outside of that tornado threat with just these high winds, you want to be seeking shelter. You do not want to be outside caught in this storm. You want to be seeking shelter if you are in the path of this with this tornado warning that is in effect. Again, this covers there a good portion of Jefferson as well as portions of Hancock, Brooke County, and even there into the western part of PA, including their portions of Washington and Beaver County. Tornado warning in effect till 5 o'clock. So up until 5 o'clock or this warning is canceled, you want to be seeking shelter. Now, if you're tuning in and you're in the path of this tornado warning, here's some safety tips. This is where you want to be seeking shelter if you're tuning in under this tornado warning. You want to be obviously getting indoors, right? You don't want to be caught outside in this. You want to be avoiding the windows. The windows are a weak point of your home where debris, if it were to be flying through the air in the event of a tornado, if it were to get through the window, it's a weak point. Then you could be dealing with debris getting blown around in the room that you could be seeking shelter in. Also, then you deal with the glass issue as well from the broken window. So you want to be avoiding windows the best you can. Get to the lowest floor. Obviously, basements going to be best, but even if you don't have a basement, say you live in a 2-story home or a 1-story home, obviously get to the first floor, right? Get to the lowest floor that you have possible, and if you haven't, get into an interior room. The idea there is that, well, you have multiple walls between you and the outdoors to help protect you more from any debris that could be getting into your home in the event of a tornado. So any debris that's getting blown around, while the exterior wall could get blown in, that interior wall can still hold. So that's why the interior room is best. So those are safety tips. If you are in the path of this tornado warning, that this is what you want to be following to get to your safe place. Some safety tips on the best place to seek shelter with this tornado warning. We'll take a live look right now in our tower cam, and we're starting to see that rain. You can see that blanket of rain, some heavy rain getting ready to move into the Steubenville area. The camera shaking as well. Those wind speeds starting to ramp up. I can hear it here at the station as well. You can hear those winds howling. Excuse me, this is Weirton. I apologize. Steubenville, okay, I get that correct. There's Steubenville Tower Cam. So you can see the extent of this wind and rain moving into the area. I can just hear that wind howling. Again, these are okay. I just saw a flash there. I just saw a flash that could very well be a down power line. I saw a flash there into the distance. So this is the winds picking up at this very instant. These winds are ramping up. And again, this is a good idea preview of what this is capable of producing. These are producing some destructively high winds. You can see the camera just shaking at the higher elevation, the guide wire shaking, and you can see that rain just getting blown around as it's moving into the area as well. Yeah, you could really hear that wind howling here at the station, the camera getting shaken up and down, the wind, and that we're hearing, I believe, what could be hail hitting the roof of our station as well. And I can, this wind, I have not heard the wind howl at the station like this before in my career here at WTOV 9. This is, again, a destructive line of severe thunderstorms moving east across portions of of Jefferson County. More flashes. These are down power. These likely are lines getting blown down, or you're getting flashes. You see those flashes on the screen there. You could see this is destructive winds. Wow. We're getting still those power flashes, likely of getting some down trees and down power lines as this is moving east across the area. The guide wires on our tower just shaking. Again, you can see just how high those winds are to be shaking our camera like this with these destructive winds that are pushing east across the area. This is a horrendous sight. And again, tornado warning in effect for portions there across, looking into portions of Jefferson County, Brooke, Hancock County. You know, if you're tuning in Brooke, Hancock County, this is just now entering into your locations. This is what to watch for if you're tuning into those areas. And again, this is why you want to be seeking shelter right now if you're tuning in Brooke, Hancock County, because what we've been seeing a preview of our tower cam overlooking Steubenville, this is what's anticipated to continue into the northern panhandle. Again, I have not seen a destructive of wind speeds evident here at the station before, especially looking at the tower cam. So there's a live look at a Weirton. So again, still just out ahead of it, the wind's starting to pick up. You'll notice still things pretty quiet. There's a flash of lightning. So again, if you're tuning in Brooke, Hancock County, what we just saw into Steubenville is what's coming its way. Again, that was a destructive sight there, a force of those wind speeds. Still hearing things hitting the roof. I assume it could be hail, could be a bit of debris as well. So this is a very scary situation. If you're tuning in from portions of Brooke, Hancock County, again, seek shelter immediately. You are still under that tornado warning leading up to 5 o'clock. You want to be seeking shelter immediately if you are in the path of this storm. Again, still fairly quiet. We're taking a live look at Weirton right now. Still fairly quiet. The wind's starting to pick up, but what we just saw into Steubenville will carry over into portions there of Brooke and Hancock County, and you want to be seeking shelter immediately. Again, seeking shelter immediately. I want to go back to the wind speeds right now, and we're going to be taking a look at these wind speeds. And right there near Steubenville, this is likely what we're seeing. This is some very high wind speeds between Steubenville and Follinsby, and this is what we were getting a live look closer to. And wind speeds, the radar estimated the wind speeds even possibly in excess of 80 miles per hour. So very destructive wind speeds between Steubenville and Follinsby at this hour. We're going to be looking right now and see if we're going to be picking up well, thankfully, correlation coefficient, so we're looking at this for any potential debris. So if we were to see a tornado on the ground, we'd be looking at this for debris. Our debris signature would be more of a blue area on the correlation coefficient, so we're not getting that would indicate a debris signature, but still what we were seeing is what was indicating some very high winds. So right there, so this is likely what we were getting a preview of, and what we were describing as I was hearing here at the station was what radar was estimating some very high winds between Steubenville and Follinsby is likely what we were observing here at the station. And now we fast forward. Thankfully, those wind speeds have lightened some with the latest radar scan, but that dark blue that we're seeing, that's where radar can still estimate. And we're seeing even spots of that looking into Hancock County as well as Brooke County. That dark blue is where radar can, that is estimating still those wind speeds can reach up to about 80 miles per hour in these locations in that dark blue. And we're getting closer to the radar site now, so even the scans that we're seeing, these wind speeds are closer to the surface with respect to what we'd be scanning, looking into Tuscarawas and Guernsey County. So this is certainly a scary sight to be seeing those destructive wind speeds coming out of the Steubenville area, now making their way, looking into portions there, primarily into northern Brooke County. That's north of, even near Follinsby and north of Follinsby, then extending up through Weirton, as well as there just east of Toronto now, moving through portions of Hancock County. And then we're seeing some, thankfully, lighter winds. The wind's starting to lighten up a bit around East Liverpool, Chester locations. But yeah, where we're seeing this blue, and especially this dark blue, extending through a lot of Brooke, Hancock County, this is where you can see a site similar to what we were just looking at in Steubenville, where we're dealing with those destructive wind speeds. And again, shaking the camera, the guide wires, and just that wind howling really is the best way to put it of what we saw. So that's where we're currently seeing those wind speeds, now getting some rumbles of thunder at this station. I don't know if you heard that, but certainly some loud thunder now in the wake of some of those high winds. So again, coming out of the Steubenville area, Follansbee area, we're seeing that pocket of some heavier winds, and then looking further north through Weirton, Toronto, Stratton, those locations, and east, then moving through Hancock County. So Hancock, Brooke County is where the area is now being impacted with these high wind speeds. This tornado warning is in effect for the same locations that we keep discussing. This tornado warning is in effect leading up to 5 o'clock. So we still have 14 minutes until this expires. Likely will continue up to that mark, although once we extend here the next 10 minutes, this threat will likely start to subside out of the northern panhandle and begin to progress more into locations in Beaver County, Washington County, more east out and into western PA. But again, right now we're seeing some of those higher wind speeds within this tornado warning across portions of Hancock as well as Brooke County, where that tornado warning is in effect till 5 o'clock. And again, if you're tuning in and this tornado warning, again, you're likely hearing those winds howling right now over Brooke, Hancock County. And if you have not done so yet, please seek shelter. And here's some safety tips of where to seek shelter in the event of this tornado warning. Obviously want to be indoors. Hopefully you are already. You want to avoid windows, get to the lowest floor. No, not all of us have a basement, but if you do, obviously that's the best spot to be. And even in a 2-story home, if you can get to that first floor, that's going to be the best, right? Even in a 2-story home, get to the first floor. Interior room is going to be best. If you have an interior room, the idea there, of course, is that you have more walls between you and the outdoors to help shield you more from any debris that would happen to get maybe through any windows and into that first space between the outdoors in that interior room. And I've seen this firsthand covering a tornado outbreak in Dayton, that a gentleman and his wife seek shelter in an interior room, and it remained untouched while the exterior walls were partially down and a lot of debris was blown around their house, but where they seek shelter in the interior room remain untouched. So definitely important if you can seek shelter in that interior room. So there's a look right now. I believe this is getting over our tower cam in Steubenville, and things a lot quieter, right? The camera is not shaking to the extent of what we just saw. Still just some heavy rain blanketing the city of Steubenville, but those winds certainly have died down in the wake of that initial line that moved through the area. So thankfully, things calming down in the wake of this across a good portion of our area. Again, impacting now the northern panhandle. Just still going to be dealing with some, obviously some lingering lightning, thunder. We're going to deal with some of this heavy rain as well in the wake of this line as it progresses east across the area. We do have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect until 7 o'clock, but we'll likely notice once this line moves east out of our area that we'll likely notice a lot of that watch begin to be canceled, likely even leading up closer towards 7 o'clock. So there's a live look at a radar right now, and we even broadened our view to give you a good idea. These storms not quite as intense as we look further south of I-70 is what we're seeing. Again, the most intense portion of this line is what we just witnessed move through Steubenville, but extending there to Jefferson, Brooke, and Hancock counties, the most intense portion of this line. Now, don't get me wrong, this potential is still there for some damaging wind gusts. It's obviously some heavy downpours, frequent lightning, even closer to Wheeling and south of Wheeling, but the wind gust potential is a lot lower. Wind gusts likely only up to about 60 miles per hour for these locations. And right there, that severe thunderstorm warning that encompasses portions of Belmont, Monroe. Notice that the potential there for wind speeds only up to 60 miles per hour. So still could deal with some high winds in those locations, but south of I-70, but likely not to the extent of what we're seeing, especially north of I-70. And again, the worst of this has moved through portions of Tuscarawas, Carroll, Harrison, now through Jefferson, and as well as Hancock, Brooke. That's where we've seen the brunt force of this system. That's where we've been dealing with a large swath of wind damage, and we just saw the flashes of likely downed power lines, trees. We were seeing it in live with the tower cam overlooking Steubenville. So I can almost guarantee we're dealing with a lot of power outages in the wake of this across Jefferson County, and likely will soon be across Hancock and Brooke County as well, as this destructive line of thunderstorms is progressing east through the northern panhandle and will begin to push into the western part of PA. Just got a report that trees are down to Sinclair Avenue. So again, we were kind of getting a preview of that as well We're seeing just the destructive force of those wind speeds on our tower cam, getting report of trees down on Sinclair Avenue in the Steubenville area. So we're already getting reports of those trees down. Again, I'm sure we're going to get reports of a lot of power outages in the wake of this as this line continues to progress to the east. That tornado warning in effect until 5 o'clock. Radar indicated rotation, but again, even outside of that potential for tornado, just these high winds is very worrisome as well, as this is the worst part of this line extending south of East Liverpool and then north of Wheeling. That's where we're seeing that most destructive portion of this line of severe thunderstorms that does extend from Columbiana County all the way south in looking to Monroe County. And again, you're tuning in to New Martinsville. In general, they're south of I-70, but especially towards New Martinsville, things still relatively quiet. Again, you're likely not going to get to the destructive forces of what we just saw move through Steubenville, but still the potential there for locations towards Tyler, Wetzel, Monroe County to deal with these wind gusts upwards of about 60 miles per hour as this moves through the area. So still could deal with some damaging winds yet to come into Martinsville, likely leading up closer to 5 o'clock. Then you'll notice that once we get here closer to 5 o'clock, this tornado warning will expire. And a lot of this is going to be moving out of locations north of I-70 by 5 o'clock. It still lingers into locations south of I-70 up until that point. I'd say up to about 6 o'clock, then it'll start to move out of locations south of I-70 as well. And again, once this does move through, thankfully that severe threat should start to subside. We'll still deal with some lingering rain here extending into the first half of tonight until a cold front passes, and then we'll likely notice a lot of this rain taper off going into tomorrow. Another live look at our tower cam. And you can see conditions, thankfully, quieting down quite a bit. So still dealing with some rain. There's a look at Steubenville. And again, if you tuned in earlier, this camera was shaking up and down violently. The guide wires were shaking violently. We heard, I'd have to investigate, Jamie heard it too here, either debris or hail hitting the roof of our station. So yeah, they were dealing with a very violent storm moving through the Steubenville area. And of course, you know, this is just the beginning of coverage. Even once in the wake of this, you know, we're going to be obviously taking a look at power outages. We're going to be reporting on damage. I'm sure getting in touch with emergency management agencies. We're going to be taking a closer look at, you know, what is in the wake of these storms as they moved across the area. So, you know, this is the beginning of our coverage, and we're still going to be keeping a close eye on what has occurred, where do we go from here, you know, just how bad was it, right? And certainly I can imagine that we're dealing with some pretty extensive damage on what we were just observing and hearing here at the station move through portions there of Jefferson County, as well as through the northern panhandle of Brooke and Hancock County. So fortunately going to be keeping a very close eye on that as we do extend here throughout this evening. But again, the good news is for locations north of I-70, you know, obviously scary part to see these move through, but in the wake of this, then things are going to start to quiet down. Another report coming in that a roof was ripped off a home on Oregon Avenue in Steubenville. So again, that's just evidence of just how high those wind speeds were. And yes, that could indicate obviously damage of a tornado, but also you can get a roof ripped off a home even just with dealing with some high winds with damaging wind gusts. So, you know, obviously going to be keeping an eye on that. The biggest thing to look for, difference between damage from a tornado or more of a straight line wind. Damaging winds, that's going to be that if a lot of that damage is just in one direction, if you've got more of debris, if you've got damage thrown in multiple directions, but especially if you have debris thrown in multiple directions as well, that can indicate a tornado. But you know, even we can still see some significant damage occur even just from some high winds, which is likely going to be the case in what we saw move through portions there of Jefferson County as well as Hancock, Brooke County. And again, we already have a report of a roof that was ripped off a home in Oregon Avenue in Steubenville. So horrendous to see, that is for sure, of the wind damage already being reported. And unfortunately, I'm sure we're going to have more reports coming in as we go throughout the evening. That's why I say coverage only begins here, and we're going to keep you updated here at WTOV 9 on what these storms have left in the wake of them as they moved across the area. And again, that's where we saw the most intense winds, from tracking it all the way from Coshocton County east through Tuscarawas, portions of Harrison, Carroll, Jefferson, and now through portions of Brooke and Hancock County. That's where we saw that core of some high winds move east across the area. And again, that's where we're going to be keeping a close eye on this line as it continues to progress towards the east. Now those high winds are moving out of the northern panhandle, and now we're moving into western PA. impacting their locations just north of Washington, then extending north into Beaver County. And this is going to be moving east towards Pittsburgh. So, keep it a close eye on this line as it progresses east into Pittsburgh, and here likely even closer to about 15 after 5 as I'd watch as this line can move into Pittsburgh. So still bringing that potential for some high winds as this progresses towards the east. You can see just the large area where the severe thunderstorm warning has been drawn, encompassing there a lot of western PA. And when we look at what the severe thunderstorm warning is in effect for, see if we can zoom in. And you could still see that tag there with the potential for wind speeds up to 80 miles per hour, the tag of destructive wind speeds. So still capable of producing those high winds that we were observing on our tower cam overlooking Steubenville. That potential is still there. And again, this is going to be progressing east, taking aim towards areas around Pittsburgh. So if you're tuning in into locations closer to Pittsburgh, maybe you have family that lives into Pittsburgh, this is going to be pushing east. And the most destructive portion of this is taking aim likely north of Washington, closer to Pittsburgh, then likely south of Cranberry. So that's the locations south of Cranberry, closer to Pittsburgh, and likely just north. Obviously still going to deal with some high winds Washington. I'm talking about likely the most destructive portion of this line that we just saw move through portions of our area. That's likely where it's going to be taking aim at this point. And again, this is moving quickly. These have been moving 50 to even over 50 miles per hour. So, these are moving quickly. So, here in a matter of even likely about 15 minutes or so, we'll likely notice this moving into portions of Pittsburgh. So, and still dealing with the potential, unfortunately, for some very high winds within this line of severe thunderstorms. Again, south of I-70, if you're tuning in closer to Wheeling, still dealing with some of those high winds that move through those locations, but not to the extent of what we were tracking further north, looking into Steubenville and Weirton area. And then if you're tuning in closer towards to Martinsville, into Tyler, Wetzel County, things still relatively quiet there into southeastern Monroe and into Wetzel County. Again, you are going to want to watch here as we go through the next hour as this moves through then portions, as it moves through Wetzel County, Tyler County. Again, likely not as destructive as what we were observing north of I-70, but still that potential to see wind gusts upwards about 60 miles per hour. So still can deal with some damaging winds with the potential up to about 60 miles per hour. See if I can, there we go. Highlighting those locations. That severe thunderstorm warning in effect till 5 o'clock could very well get extended then to cover more of the portion of Tyler as well as Wetzel County. We're looking at 4:58. We got a couple minutes left of this tornado warning that's in effect until 5 o'clock. Again, though, the worst of this is now east and even moving closer towards Pittsburgh at this hour. So, we've seen the worst of this system, this line of thunderstorms likely out of our area at this point. I think the worst of it is out of our area. Again, we'll start to still see quite a bit of rain, some frequent lightning, some heavy downpours still across portions of Columbiana and then into locations just north of I-70 in general. And then that damaging wind threat will then start to transition for locations south of I-70. So at this minute or hour, we're seeing that the damaging wind potential start to diminish, thankfully, for locations north of I-70. 70 mile per hour wind gusts at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. So dealing with the observed wind speed at least up to 70 miles per hour at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. And I imagine that those wind speeds are going to be estimated even higher than that from what we saw move through locations further north of Wheeling, moving closer into Jefferson, Hancock, Brooke County. I imagine those wind speeds are going to be even higher than that. So even still dealing with the wind speed that was observed at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, the wind gusts reaching 70 miles per hour. So certainly still some significant winds looking towards Ohio County. And again, what we're seeing south of I-70, that potential is there. And these wind gusts likely not to the extent of 80, but still 60, maybe 70 mile per hour wind gusts then south of I-70. And again, these severe thunderstorm warnings for Marshall County until 5:30, potential for wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour. Looking then into portions of Monroe County. We're dealing with the line of thunderstorms not quite as destructive as what we've been tracking, looking closer to and especially north of I-70. So thankfully, we're dealing with the destructive wind potential starting to diminish for our area. Still could deal with some high winds with what remains south of I-70, but even then, thankfully, we'll start to see the damaging wind potential come to an end here. Watch about over the next hour as we'll start to see the line of the storms move out of our area, and then weather will thankfully start to quiet down likely for the remainder of the night. But that tornado warning, it's 5 o'clock, no longer in effect. Of course, we're going to be starting News 9 Live at 5 coming up right now, and I'll continue to give you the latest updates on this line of storms and what has been left in the wake of it as we do go through News 9 Live at 5. So, of course, stay tuned for the latest.